don't care how prepared and educated you feel to buy a home, you might completely regret your home purchase. Today's video, we have 3 different examples to share with you. One is like a crazy HOA that's charging more than $1,000. Another one is someone who sold their house at a low interest rate to buy a much nicer house and completely regret it. And the last one was someone who was trying to be a fix and flipper, bought a house with their realtor telling them like, hey, it's only going to cost this much to do this or that or whatever. And then we're just completely shocked by all the freaking hidden costs that came up and them spending like over $30,000 within like a month or two and completely leaving them broke. So make sure you really listen to these stories and take the lessons from each one of these stories as well, so you don't find yourself in a similar position. Let's start off with the story called Going Broke in Hawaii. Actually, the name that she made up with, so kudos to you. Aloha, Javier. I sold our house in Tucson at the end of 2021 at a great price. I had my house paid off in Tucson, and I probably think it was a big mistake to let it go. After being in lockdown for a year, I decided that if it were to happen again, where would I want to be stuck? The answer was Hawaii. I couldn't find an affordable house and ended up buying a dumpy condo I was renting last year. Luckily, this place is right on the water and had a fantastic view. I can easily sell it, but I still can't afford any decent house. My HOAs went up to about $1,187 per month, plus I have a mortgage, and with inflation, I am eating away at my savings. Houses back in Tucson have gone up as well, plus the rates, and I'm continually trying to stake it out here and hope that something comes up. I don't know what I'm going to do. Going broke in Hawaii. First of all, thank you for sending me your story. It's incredibly brave for you guys to share your story so we can use it as an example. Please know that this isn't coming from a place of judgment. I think by sharing these stories, we can help a generation of new home buyers to really understand what they can do to avoid these kind of situations. So thank you again for sharing the story. Now here's the thing. This person, I believe, is retired and was in a position where they made the choice to move. They rather live the rest of their life in Hawaii. And I don't blame them. I've never been to Hawaii, but it looks like an amazing place. But unfortunately, she put herself in a position where she's eating away at her savings. And that's never a good position to be in, regardless of what point of your life you're in. So I really hope that, I mean, she has some equity, she has some value there. I hope there's an alternative way for her to kind of figure something out where maybe Hawaii's not the best place. She can sell it, get some equity because it looks like she has some, and go somewhere more comfortable. But you know what? Maybe she makes that decision for herself to say, hey, I'm going to stay put and I have enough to survive for the next, I don't know, 5, 10, 15 years, hopefully. And I'm just going to stay put and be where I am. Maybe, you know, find other ways to maybe get a little job or something. So that way, because $1,000 isn't that much, right? Maybe you can go get a little part-time job or something just so you can have something to do. And you have enough to maybe offset that eating away at your savings. But that's her and that's not you. For everybody else out there, you may not be retired. You may not have had a house paid off. You really, really need to make sure you're moving for the right reasons. We get into this like emotional frenzy where you have the need to buy a new house when you already have a house that's just fine. But you have this complete need and you start convincing yourself why you need it. It's like when a new iPhone comes out, I do this where I'm like, oh God, this new phone has the new chip. The menu looks a little different. Oh gosh. So you start getting into like this frenzy. So for a home, it might be like, oh gosh, our family's growing, or oh, we need to live in this area because this area is not as great. Or, you know, you start coming up with these reasons. But the thing is, moving into another area comes with another set of problems. The house you're currently in, you already know what's wrong with it. You already know the area well. You know how your budget looks like. Maybe do what I do when I want a new phone. Go get a case. Go buy a brand new case and change the wallpaper. Maybe you need to invest some of that money to start kind of making your house nicer, upgrading your house. And because that short-term cost of saving money to repair or do remodels of your house, it'll be infinitely much better than having to actually uproot yourself, go buy and invest in another 30-year mortgage in another area, and making that very difficult decision. This person couldn't have known that the HOA fees went up the way they did, and that's unfortunately one of the parts that you can't avoid. But just know that if you're buying a home with an HOA, that might be an issue that you might pop into. So please do your research with that. And if you want to avoid this, just don't buy a house with an HOA altogether. This next story is called Severe Buyer's Remorse and Struggling to Cope from Reddit. Here it is. Me and my wife had a few rough months. 3 years ago, we purchased a starter home with exceptionally low interest rate. It was a fine home and we enjoyed it. However, we began to have a unique and severe neighbor problem that was unresolvable even by the police. She was pregnant and we didn't feel safe in our home anymore. We felt that we needed to move toward our home and signed a temporary lease. Fast forward to now, we begin a new home search, and I think with a newborn, it felt important that we were in a safe neighborhood in a good school district. It proved difficult, and it felt an immense amount of pressure. We found a home that we felt we liked. It felt a little overpriced, but it checked most of our boxes. We felt pleased with the home inspection. Fast forward to the person, I am now feeling the most extreme and intense feelings of buyer's remorse. I feel like I lost my mind. I think we massively overpaid, and it's a home in the 1980s. So far has been a ton of problems with the HVAC, to stairs not feeling terribly safe, to electrical issues, to lingering smell that I can't identify, an awkward layout in a small kitchen. I can't even get the damn dryer installed because the tubing is too short. I feel like I'm having a challenging time ever selling it for a similar price. Mostly looking for stories of people that found themselves in a similar situation. So once again, another tough spot that they found themselves in. And honestly, I don't disagree with why they moved. For someone who has children and always looks out for their best interest, and especially having a difficult neighbor, right? Because this is one things that are uncontrollable. And if that neighbor was bringing a dangerous environment to not only his wife, but to an unborn child at that point, especially with you not having your child even born yet, your brain's like in a different state, that nesting state. I don't disagree with the reason why they moved out. However, I don't necessarily agree with this whole idea of like buying in a good school district in a good area. Okay, this is a very common sales tactic, in my opinion, that is used by realtors. Okay, realtors are always, oh, this area is a school district. Good. Yeah, great. But here's the reality. You can live in a okay school district, in an okay neighborhood, and your neighbors can be absolutely amazing. You can live in a great school district and in a great neighborhood. All it takes is one neighbor just to be completely difficult and terrible, and it doesn't matter if you live there. Now, obviously, you lived in a pretty good situation, right, with your house. Didn't seem like it was a terrible neighborhood. It looks like you just got plagued with one bad neighbor, and that made you run away from the situation. Once again, I don't disagree with that. Now, in hindsight, that rate being really low, maybe there was a better opportunity to go possibly rent it out. And obviously we can't change any of that, so there's no really point. But for anyone out there who's in that position again, who has a really low rate, I don't think rates are ever going to be that low again. So try your best to hold on to it. But if you didn't, that's okay. Then whatever it is, what it is. This person sold their house and they found another place. Really asking yourself, not especially that you're buying a home again, like what kind of house do you want? What kind of like expectations do you have out of your home? Are you looking for a fixer upper that needs a lot of work and that's older? And if that's a question answer, then go look at those houses. If you need something newer, you don't want to bother or worry about any like freaking like repairs or anything, then go buy yourself something newer. And yes, of course, research the neighborhood. Don't get me wrong. Focus should be to find the right house first and then research the neighborhood to see if it's right. Because you can only be looking in a specific neighborhood and you think you might find the right house here, but then you might end up finding something terrible, or you might actually end up researching, or you forget to research rather later, that there's a sex offender in the neighborhood or something, right? You just don't know. So don't make that the main priority. Like this whole idea of safe neighborhood, good school districts fluctuate. Schools fluctuate depending on the teachers they have at that point, whoever's running the school, whatever. What won't fluctuate is the neighborhood, the long-term appeal. Are there people that have been living there for a while? Are there people that have been living there for 5 years, 10 years? Or are they all brand new people that live in the area? Like really get to it. And here's the crappy part about everything. You could buy a house and just have a neighbor move in eventually that completely ruins it for you, and this could happen again. At a certain point, you have to say, okay, what can I do to remedy the situation? And that last time you had the opportunity to actually get out of it, which good for you, but you won't have that opportunity anymore. So if you're in a similar situation to this guy who maybe won't have the ability to sell it in the future, really do the extra diligent effort to research the neighborhood, research everything else. And the guy is obviously having a hard time. He's even complaining about like the length of the dryer tube. You're just in a state of overwhelmment and anxiety, and I understand it's completely valid. But maybe taking a chance to step out and just kind of refocusing it, because guess what? You're not going to be able to sell it. You're not going to be able to move. The good thing is you have your family safe in a comfortable neighborhood. Handle each problem step by step, right? If you're looking at a long flight of stairs, the first step is always what you need to focus in on, not what the eventual thing is. So focus on the smell for a month or two. Focus on the dryer length in a month or two. And slowly but surely you can tackle these things and make your house into a home. Last one is, I'm going to call it shocked by the costs that I felt were hitting for me. Hey Javier, this is a tough email to write, but if this will help someone in the future, then so be it. I went into the home buying process well educated and prepared. I had 3 months reserves and I had enough for my down payment and closing costs. I began our search looking for a home that was remodeled but didn't like the prices. So my agent recommended I look at fixer-uppers. She made it seem like it was pretty easy and fun to rehab a home. And of course, I'm a huge fan of the darn Fix My House shows on HGTV. So I thought to myself, why not? Oh, brother. Those freaking shows always make problems look like, oh gosh, it's a $10,000 unexpected thing. Oh no, oh. It make it seem like it's not a big deal, huh? Anyways, we'll get to it later. During our inspection, we discovered there was a lot of work to be done, and of course, I got the seller to do as much as possible. But because it was a multiple offer situation and they had many backup offers, my agent recommended that we concede on a lot of the repairs that we were asking for. I created an Excel sheet of what the cost of the major repairs were and that I was going to need, and based on online research and when my agent told me, I got an idea of what the costs were, and I felt like they were manageable. When I moved in, I was completely shocked by the costs I felt were hidden from me. I began writing check after check to contractors for things I felt needed to be done, and I became obsessed with the idea of finishing my house to the point where it broke my bank. I spent the following in order: $3,000 to replace my garage door, $600 to replace my AC, $10,000 to replace my air conditioning, $4,000 for blinds, $6,300 for exterior and interior paint, and unfortunately, I ran out of money in the middle of replacing my tiles. So now I am in this empty house with a new AC and half-finished floors, trying to work myself out of this hole. Please use my story as an example of what not to do. Best of luck. I mean, in hindsight, we can see what the issues were, right? But I think this is a common trap that people find themselves in. They want to be the fix and flipper. They want to be, I call them the Bob the Builders, right? They want to be that they have maybe an extra cushion of 30, 40, 50K, and they're like, yeah, I can remodel a house. I always tell people this: if you're buying a house that needs work, if you don't have enough money to put everything in the order that you want it, then don't buy it. Okay? If you have a problem with the AC being old and rusty, if you don't have those extra 10K right now to actually replace it or work diligently to get I think there's financing for it, but I've paid off immediately, so you're not paying any interest on it, because I think they offer like 6-month no interest things on them, then don't buy it. I think if you would have used this logic when you saw this house, which I'm kind of struggling with this concept, and please, people in the comment section and people watching this, let me know. There's this kind of blame game happening where the agent's being blamed. However, I do think the agent was in the wrong and actually might be a little liable.
Wait a minute.
They made you concede. Well, they recommended you concede, I should say. And then they gave you costs of what the repairs were, like when you asked them what does the AC cost and whatnot. So yes, shame on them for recommending that. But remember, agents work for you. You have the power to say no, and it's too late to talk. I mean, there's no point to saying you should have done this. But for everyone else, you have the power to say no. If it's uncomfortable and it's just too much and it doesn't follow the guideline that you set, which, and like I gave you a guideline earlier, right? Like if you cannot afford to fix it completely, then don't buy it. If it doesn't stick with that, then you have the ability to say no and back out. And if your agent's throwing a fit and saying, oh no, it's not going to work, you have to buy this, it's because they're so have such heavy commission breath that they want you to close so they can get that check in 2 weeks. Fire their ass and go find someone that's going to put the work in. Because yeah, houses fall out of escrow all the time. That's nothing crazy. I'm reading this book called Leading with the Heart by Coach K. And there's a chapter where he talks about having standards of excellence, right? And having a very clear understanding to your team, what are your standards of excellence? And that way you know what the standards are. And if one of your standards of excellence could be, like I mentioned earlier, if I can't afford to completely repair something and I don't want the house. Now, of course, that's an extreme one, but in a situation where you're buying a fixer-upper or you don't have a lot of cash reserves, then that's a standard you could have for yourself. You were looking at houses that were more remodeled. Well, maybe don't look at remodeled houses, but maybe go find houses that have like ACs and roofs that were repaired in the last few years, or maybe paint that's been painted recently. Like whatever your standards are, look for those. And yes, you're going to overpay a little for them, but think of it as like you're financing the repairs you're going to have to do. Because tell you what, the almost 30, a little bit over $30,000 you spent, that would have much been better in your bank account. And so I would rather you have an extra $100 in your monthly payment and to keep those $30,000 in your bank account than having to save this money you did for a fixer-upper and having be left with no cash reserves. Any recommendation anyone gives you on the fly, like, oh, that'll probably cost $3,000 to fix, don't listen to them, okay? Don't listen to them. Do your own independent research. So yes, I think both are true. It sucks that your agent recommended that, and actually maybe worth having a conversation with them, but also you have the ability and the right to say no and walk out of the situation. For anyone out there who's listening, please know that, remember that, so you don't follow this example. Some of these repairs, I don't see that they were very necessary. I feel like the blinds are nice. Yeah, the exterior and interior paint, 100% makes a house look completely fresh and new. But that's like something that they do at the HGTV shows to make the house look a lot nicer and dazzling, right? You could have held on to this $10,300 and maybe have that be your savings. The AC being replaced, I get it. Maybe that's something you have to do. The garage door, maybe, I don't know if it was opening anymore or closing anymore. I don't know why you replaced that, but I felt that maybe those funds could have been used better. So I think if we can use this example of this person is if you're going to have a list of things that you want done with the house, that's completely fine, but you make sure you handle it appropriately. You're not in an HGTV show. You're not going to get these done right away really quickly. Do things diligently. Do one repair every quarter. Like what's a big upgrade for the quarter? Okay, we're going to change the flooring this quarter, and that's going to cost you, I don't know. There I am giving a freaking number at the top of my head, completely disregarding my advice. I don't know, let's just say, I'm going to give a really high number so it's just not even true but shocking. Say $10,000 for a tile upgrade. I don't know, change your flooring out. $10,000. Okay, that's the one you're doing this quarter and that's it. Even though you feel the urge to, maybe we should throw in the paint too, or no. Do stick yourself to one quarter. If you're making a ton of money, maybe do once a month. If you're not making a lot of money, maybe don't do a quarter, once every half a year. You make your standards of excellence and you keep them, okay? You're not an HGTV 8 fix and flipper, Joanna Gaines, whatever the heck you want to be. Let them do that. You be more reasonable and practical with your approach. Because if you start focusing on that, there's going to be a lot of hidden costs that are going to shock you, just like they did with this guy. It looks like you have the ability to work your way out of this because you're saying you're working yourself out of this hole. So I'm hoping you can apply yourself and start building up your savings again. I would even leave the floors unfinished. Just start working on your savings again. Build that emergency savings, and once it's saved up, then start kind of slowly fixing whatever you need to fix. And hey, you have a brand new AC, so at least your house will be nice and cool. At least you didn't buy a house with your budget not in mind. Because I recently had someone who bought a house. Like I think they're currently only making like $8,000 a month, and their house payment's like $6,000. They have like a first mortgage of $4,000 and a second mortgage of $2,000. So they're in a bad spot. And if you want to see that story, go check out that video now with my last home buyer regrets video.